He respects himself. He can't expect anyone else to. It just doesn't work that way. You can't walk through life expecting women, or anyone really, to treat you like a king when you're carrying yourself like a servant to your own fears, your own doubts, or worse, your own lack of standards. A lot of men get this confused. They think being nice or always agreeable will earn them admiration, but respect isn't given because you're easygoing or because you never rock the boat. In fact, always bending over backward to please others often does the opposite. It chips away at your value in their eyes. Especially when it comes to women, respect is rooted in how you carry yourself, how you assert your boundaries, and how clearly you define your self-worth. You see, self-respect isn't just about walking with your chest out or talking with confidence. It's about the daily decisions you make, how you respond when you're disrespected, how you handle rejection, whether or not you let someone waste your time. It's about the way you choose to show up in life, especially when no one is watching. Because when you have self-respect, you don't chase people who don't value you. You don't tolerate being taken for granted. And that quiet, steady energy, where you know who you are and you don't need to prove it, that is magnetic. Where you know who you are and you don't need to prove it, that is magnetic. Now, here's what a lot of men don't realize. Women are incredibly intuitive. They can tell when you're pretending to be confident. They can sense when you're saying one thing but believing another deep down, and they absolutely pick up on it when you're putting them on a pedestal while putting yourself on the floor. That's not love. That's not leadership. That's self-betrayal, and it doesn't inspire respect. When a man respects himself, he doesn't tolerate breadcrumbs. He doesn't settle for someone who only calls when it's convenient. He doesn't stay where he's tolerated instead of celebrated. And you know what happens? That kind of man, he naturally raises the bar, not just for how others treat him, but for the kind of woman who even dares to come close to his world. His energy says, I'm whole, I'm focused, I'm not desperate, I'm not here to convince anyone of my value. You either see it or you don't. That's not arrogance, that's peace, that's power. And women deeply respect that, because deep down, every woman wants to be with a man who knows himself. Not a man constantly questioning his worth or seeking validation from her attention. A man who commands respect simply by being fully grounded in who he is. And let's be clear. Self-respect doesn't mean being cold or closed off. You can still be warm, caring, and emotionally available, but you do it from a place of strength, not neediness, from a place of, I'm choosing to give because I want to, not because I'm hoping you'll finally approve of me. That distinction makes all the difference. So if you're wondering why certain men are respected, admired, even silently chased, it's because they've done the work of respecting themselves first. And once you do that, once you truly start to live like your time, your energy, and your peace matter, the way women respond to you will change without you even having to say a word. Let me tell you something that separates the boys from the men in every relationship, every challenge, every turning point. Emotional control. It's not about being emotionless. It's not about pretending things don't get to you. It's about how you respond when they do. Because the truth is, your ability to regulate your emotions is one of the clearest signs of maturity and one of the most respected traits in a man. You see, emotional control doesn't mean bottling things up and pretending you're fine when you're not. It means being aware of what you're feeling, but not letting those feelings control your actions. A man who's constantly reacting, constantly triggered, constantly flying off the handle, or crumbling under pressure, that man might get attention, but he won't get long-term respect. And women, they watch closely. They notice how you react when things don't go your way, when you're disappointed, when you're tested, when someone disrespects you. Do you explode? Do you shut down? Or do you take a breath, stay composed, and respond with clarity and strength? Because here's what happens when a man lacks emotional control. He becomes unpredictable, and not in the exciting, mysterious kind of way. He becomes unstable. And no woman truly respects a man she cannot emotionally rely on. If she has to worry that one wrong word will lead to a meltdown or silent treatment, she'll protect herself by withdrawing respect and eventually love. The man who earns respect is the one who understands that emotions are powerful, but he's more powerful. He doesn't give his peace away every time someone tests him. He doesn't allow his anger, jealousy, or insecurity to dictate his behavior, and in doing so, he creates an environment where the people around him feel safe, even if they don't always agree with him. Women admire emotional strength because it shows discipline. It shows self-awareness. It shows leadership. You become a safe space, not just emotionally, but energetically. You become someone she can trust, even in chaos. And trust me, in relationships, that's gold. Think about it. When life throws something your way, and it will, what's more attractive? A man who panics, blames, or lashes out? Or a man who pauses, processes, and makes a rational move forward? One creates drama, the other creates stability. One drains her, the other grounds her. Now, I'm not saying be robotic. There's room for vulnerability, there's room for honest conversations, but the difference is you lead those moments with purpose, not panic. You choose your words, you manage your tone, and you know when to speak and when to step back. That's emotional intelligence. That's power. Some men confuse emotional control with weakness, like they're not supposed to feel anything. But control doesn't mean denial. It means choosing strength over impulse. It means being the calm in the storm, not the cause of it. And that quiet strength, that's what builds respect over time. You know the kind of man people follow? The one who keeps his head while others are losing theirs? The one who's not easily shaken? And that same energy, that presence, it doesn't just draw admiration. It earns deep respect from friends, from family, and absolutely from women, because when you master your emotions, you don't just react to the world. You shape how the world reacts to you. You show that you're not a slave to your feelings, but a man who can feel deeply and still stay in control. Move anything. His purpose speaks before he does. Now, here's what a lot of people get wrong, especially men, when it comes to relation. They think that being present for a woman means making her the center of their universe. They drop everything the moment she calls. They abandon their goals, their plans, their structure, all to make sure she feels like she's number one. And while it might seem romantic in the beginning, over time, it sends the wrong message. It tells her that you're not building anything for yourself, that your entire sense of value is wrapped up in her validation. But the men women truly respect, those men don't make the woman their purpose. They already have one, something they're building, something they're committed to. And instead of pulling them away from that purpose, the right woman becomes inspired by it and wants to be part of that journey. It becomes a partnership, not a rescue mission. When you have a clear sense of purpose, it shifts your entire energy. You walk differently, you speak differently, you become harder to distract. You're not available for just anything or anyone because you're working on something that matters to you. And that energy, it's magnetic. It creates a kind of mystery and focus that pulls people in, not because you're trying to impress them, but because you're clearly not trying to. You see, a man without purpose is like a boat without a rudder. He's just drifting, waiting for the next thing to give him direction. And women can sense that. They might tolerate it for a while, especially if there's charm or attraction in the beginning. But over time, that lack of ambition, that lack of fire, it becomes unattractive because if you can't lead your own life, how are you going to lead in a relationship? Purpose doesn't always mean something massive. You don't need to be a CEO or starting some global movement. It could be your craft, your fitness, your personal development, your dream project. What matters is that you have something you're deeply committed to, something that brings discipline and structure into your life. And you'll notice something interesting when you live like that. You stop chasing. You're no longer out here begging for attention or trying to prove your worth. You're too busy becoming. And that shift alone changes the way women see you. You go from being an option to being someone they admire, someone they respect. Think about the men you look up to, the ones people naturally listen to, follow, want to be around. They're not sitting around waiting for life to hand them something. They're building. They're growing. And it's not just about money or status. It's about direction. When a man has that, he becomes powerful and people feel it. Women feel it. It's not always easy to stay on course. Life throws distractions. Relationships can be emotional, but the man who earns lasting respect is the one who doesn't lose himself in the process. He brings his partner into his purpose, but he never lets her replace it. Leadership is one of those words that gets thrown around a lot, especially when we talk about relationships and masculinity. But let's be real. There's a difference between trying to control everything and actually leading. The men who are truly respected, not just obeyed or tolerated, are the ones who lead with clarity, not with control. And trust me, women can feel that difference instantly. You see, control is rooted in fear. It's about trying to manage everything and everyone, so nothing feels uncertain. But leadership is rooted in confidence. It's about having vision, direction, and the emotional intelligence to bring others along without needing to force them. And that's what women respect. They don't want to be micromanaged, ordered around, or treated like they can't make decisions. But they absolutely want a man who can guide, who can take initiative and who knows where he's going, because that kind of energy makes them feel safe, not small. Some men think being a leader in a relationship means making all the decisions, calling all the shots, never showing vulnerability. But that's not leadership, that's ego. Real leadership is knowing when to take charge and when to listen. It's about understanding that your role isn't to dominate, but to direct with wisdom, with care, and with balance. And the truth is, women want to follow a man who leads with consistency and integrity, not someone who tries to assert control out of insecurity. If your authority is based on fear or manipulation, it's not going to last, but if it's based on trust, strength, and emotional steadiness, you'll not only earn her respect, you'll keep it. Think about how leadership shows up in everyday moments. It's in how you handle stress. It's in how you plan your life. It's in how you take responsibility for your actions. It's in how you deal with conflict. Are you defensive and combative? Or do you stay composed and solution-focused? Because the man who can handle pressure without folding, that's the man people follow, and that's the man women respect. Now, don't confuse leadership with being bossy. They're not the same. Being bossy is all about control, wanting things done your way just because. Leadership is about influence. It's about seeing the bigger picture and helping guide things toward the best possible outcome. It means being decisive, yes, but also being flexible enough to consider other perspectives. That balance is powerful. When a woman sees that you can lead without making her feel lesser, that you can include her voice while still standing firm in your values, that's when she truly respects you. That's when she feels like she can trust you. And that's when she becomes more open, more feminine, more invested. Not because you forced her to be, but because you created the kind of space where she wants to be. And let's not forget, leading also means leading yourself. You can't expect anyone to follow you if you don't even have control over your own life. Your habits, your discipline, your emotional state, those are all part of the example you set. A man who can't lead himself can't lead anyone else. So if you want respect, stop trying to control, start leading. Be the man with the vision. Be the man who invites partnership, not submission. Be the man who listens, adapts, and grows because leadership isn't loud. It's not aggressive. It's steady, it's grounded, and it shows up in how you live, not just in what you say. There's this fine line that so many men struggle to walk. Being kind without being a pushover, and honestly, it's one of the biggest mistakes I see. Some men think that the key to earning a woman's respect is to always agree with her, always say yes, always be available, always try to keep the peace no matter what. But let me tell you something real. Constantly saying yes doesn't make you more lovable. It makes you easier to overlook. Respect doesn't come from being agreeable. It comes from having a spine. It comes from having the courage to say no when something doesn't feel right, even if it risks disappointing someone. Women might appreciate kindness, but they respect backbone. They want a man who has the strength to hold his own ground, not in an aggressive, disrespectful way, but in a calm, confident, self-assured way. And here's the truth. If you're constantly trying to please everyone, especially in relationships, you start to lose yourself. You become this watered-down version of who you are. You say things you don't believe. You go places you don't want to go. You agree to things that don't sit well with you, all in the name of keeping the peace. But peace without truth isn't real. It's performance. And no one respects a man who's constantly performing. Think about it. How can anyone truly respect you if you don't even respect your own voice? If every time there's a disagreement, you fold? If every time someone crosses a line, you let it slide just to keep things cool? That's not maturity. That's fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as difficult. But ironically, trying to avoid that conflict often leads to something worse. Losing respect and eventually losing connection. Women respect a man who is kind, absolutely, but they respect him more when that kindness is rooted in strength, not in fear. Being kind doesn't mean you're always available. It means you're intentional. It means you're respectful without self-sacrificing. It means you give when it's real, not just to earn approval or avoid tension. You're allowed to have opinions. You're allowed to set boundaries. You're allowed to say, that doesn't work for me. You're allowed to walk away from situations that don't honor who you are. That doesn't make you harsh. It makes you honest, and honesty, when delivered with calm conviction, is one of the most respectable qualities a man can have. It's also worth saying many men mistake being unavailable or emotionally distant for strength. But the real strength is in balance. It's in being present without being needy. It's in showing up without giving away your dignity. You're not meant to be cold or closed off. You're meant to be steady, unshakable, centered. That energy says, I care, but I won't lose myself to prove it. And that's the kind of man women respect. The one who listens, but doesn't always agree. The one who loves, but doesn't tolerate disrespect. The one who gives, but doesn't allow himself to be drained. That's not arrogance, it's self-awareness. So don't try to earn respect by overextending yourself. You don't need to be the guy who says yes to everything just to be liked. Instead, be the man who knows who he is, what he stands for, and what he's willing to accept. Be kind, be fair, but above all, be grounded. There's something deeply attractive and deeply respected about a man who's whole on his own, a man who isn't waiting for a relationship to complete him. He doesn't need a partner to feel valuable or validated. He wants a woman, yes, but he doesn't need her to function. And that kind of independence, that kind of emotional and mental strength, it speaks volumes without him even having to say a word. See, a lot of men make the mistake of thinking that in order to show love, they need to lose themselves in it. They pour all their time, all their energy, and all their focus into the woman, and little by little they forget who they were before she showed up. They give up their routines, their purpose, their space. They shrink themselves to fit into her world instead of inviting her into theirs. But here's the truth. Women don't want a man who disappears into them. They want a man who has his own life, his own drive, his own goals, his own passions. A man who stands tall with or without a relationship, because being needed can feel nice at first, but over time, it becomes pressure. It becomes weight. And no woman wants to feel like she's your emotional oxygen. She wants to feel chosen, not clung to. A man who's comfortable being alone radiates a different kind of confidence. He doesn't panic if she takes time to herself. He doesn't spiral when she has her own life. He trusts her space because he's at peace in his own. And that level of self-security, that's what women respect because it shows maturity. It shows discipline. It shows that you're not looking for someone to save you from your own emptiness. Now, don't confuse independence with emotional unavailability. That's not the point. You can be independent and still deeply connected. You can lead your own life while also building something meaningful with someone else. In fact, that balance is where the magic happens. When two whole people come together, not to fill a void, but to grow, challenge, and elevate each other, that's when relationships become powerful. When a man is rooted in who he is, he doesn't lose himself in love. He shows up fully, but he doesn't abandon the things that made him strong in the first place. He still works on his goals. He still takes care of his body, his mind, his mission. He makes space for love, but he never lets it take over the driver's seat. And you know what that does? It actually makes him more desirable because the moment you stop chasing is the moment people start paying attention. This is the kind of man who sets the tone in a relationship, not by control, not by dominance, but by being deeply grounded. His presence says, I want you here, but I don't need you to be okay. And that quiet confidence, it's irresistible. It tells her she's free to be herself because you're not depending on her for your identity. And when things go wrong, as they sometimes do, this kind of man doesn't fall apart. He doesn't beg, plead, or lose his sense of self. He mourns, sure. He feels, but then he stands back up because his foundation isn't built on someone else. It's built on who he is at his core. So if you want to be the kind of man women respect, become whole first. Fill your own cup. Build your own life. Learn to enjoy your own company because when you stop looking for someone to complete you and instead become the man who can complement someone else's life, that's when everything changes.